Genesis chapter 14, verse 4. Shteim Eisrei Shana Avadu et Kedor Laomer. So 12 year, literally is what it says. 12 Shana, year, Avadu, they served Kedor Laomer. Ushalosh Eisrei Shana Maradu. But the 13th year they rebelled. They maraded. So let's come back up here looking at these 12 years in which they served. The Talmud comments about this in Tractate Shabat, page 11, during which they committed their sins was together 26 years. As it is written, 12 years they served Kedor Laomer, and 13 years they rebelled. And in the 14th year, Kedor Laomer came, arrived. The 12 years plus the 14 years during which they were enslaved were not years of tranquility, leaving only 26 tranquil years when they were sinful. So the Talmud is pointing out that they were sinful all this time, this confederation of nations. Avram only enters the fight because his family is involved. Otherwise, let the wicked destroy the wicked. Ushalos esrei shana. Now on this end, 12 years, there's another comment I want to share with you guys. This is from Seder Olam. The Seder Olam interprets Ushalosh esrei shana to mean and 13 years. In other words, they rebelled 13 years. It adds these 13 years to the 12 years mentioned previously in our verse and claims that the Bible deals with a 25-year period, 12 of service, and 13 years of rebellion. So just a little slightly different there. And Targum Onqelos translates this: 12 years they had served Kedor Laomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. Okay, so just exactly like we did. And one more comment on the whole verse. Sarna chimes in that Hebrew omits the preposition, as in these verses, thus allowing the number to be treated as an ordinal or cardinal. The present rendering is the most natural. Some exegetes understand the rebellion to have lasted 13 years, right? Instead of just being on the 13th, that they're actually rebelling for a full 13 years. Genesis chapter 14, verse 5. ובארבע עשרה שנה בא כדור לאומר והמלאכים אשר איתו ויכו את רפאים בעשת'רot קרנayim ואת הזוזים בהם ואת האימים בשווה קרייתיים. And on the 14th year, Kedor Laomer arrived, and the kings who were with him, and they struck, this is nakhah for the Hebrew students, they smacked the Rl'ephayim. So let's look at Rl'ephayim here. They struck the Rl'ephayim? So I'm just going to quote you from my book. The Rl'ephayim, Zuzim, and Emoth are all various giant clans. See, look at this guys, Rl'ephayim, Zuzim, and Imim. Right? Sometimes we get as Emoth. They're all giant clans. They're various tribes of the giant clans. Rl'ephayim is an interesting word, as it variously translates as the shades. Right? Like if we understand it from Ugaritic, they're the shades. Or they're also, in Ugaritic, this word also means the heroes. Right? Like these were the heroes of those wicked nations. Or dead spirits. If you look at older lexicons like Brown Driver Briggs or Gesenius, they're going to tell you the Rl'ephayim are the dead spirits. This is because the spirits of the dead giants are the source of demons. Right? This is where we get demons from. Sometimes people go, oh, where did demons come from? Why did God make demons? Well, he didn't make demons. Demons are the result of rebellious angelic activity. And it's not like many assume that the angels themselves became demons, but rather their offspring. Their hybrid offspring with humans. When that offspring died, when the giants died, the Anakim, when they died, their offspring became demons. Okay, so Ted asks a good question. She says, the dead spirits have bodies? No, I'm just telling you the various definitions of this word. Okay? In context, these are the tribes, it's one of the tribes of giants, right? They had different tribes, just like the people had different tribes, right? But the etymology of the word, the history of the word, when they died, when one of the Rl'ephayim would die, when one of the giants, one of the zuzim would die, one of the emot means terrors, right? Or imeim, when they would die, then their spirit would not rest like a normal human spirit, since they're a mix of humanity and fallen angelic being, fallen benei Elohim, sons of God, right? Since they were this unholy mix, we learn from Enochian literature and from Jubilees and some other extra biblical writings that God did not allow them to rest. Instead, they were doomed to roam the earth until the judgment day, right? Some say, some translation, some traditions say 500 years, right? That they would only roam for 500 years. But if that were the case, we wouldn't have demonic activity today, right? So I'm going with one that says they roam until the judgment day. And then they'll be destroyed, basically. So their parents, they get chained up, right? The ones who help cause this stuff. But the actual giants themselves, when the giant dies, a human spirit rests, like goes to sleep, right? It's in a place called Avram's bosom, right? You know, we go to sleep. Some say just in Sheol. Anyway, the point is we rest until the judgment day, right? So people, when they die, it's really kind of fallacious when, you know, someone dies and then someone tells someone, don't worry, they're in heaven now, right? No, they're not in heaven yet. That's not how it works. Because the heaven where people exist doesn't exist yet. The heaven will be the Olam haba, the world to come. It has not come yet. It has not arrived yet. Right? That's different than the celestial locations where the angels currently reside and move about, right? The so-called seven heavens or seven shemayim. That's different. The place where we will go to is we will resurrect. God will judge us, and those of us who he determines that we have walked the narrow path properly and have accepted his son and demonstrated that faith, we will be the residents of the Olam haba, the world to come, the new world, right? The spirits of the fallen Rl'ephayim and the fallen zuzim and the fallen imeim or emot, they will not. They will be destroyed on that day. Or some say cast down to Tartarus with their parents. Yeah, does that make sense? But it's interesting that Rl'ephayim, it has these various meanings in different languages. So like in Ugaritic, the Rl'ephayim, it means like the folk heroes, right? That they were the heroes, the great warriors in the Ugaritic literature, in the Baal cycle, the Baal epic. This is how they're referred to. And Rl'ephayim also in Hebrew can mean shades, as well as in Ugaritic shades. So for example, people would notice a shadow moving, but there's nothing to cast the shadow. You see? So that's the Rl'ephayim, shades, the shades. So you could even interpret this, the shades, if you want to be hyper literal about what the meaning of the name means. These other names for them, the zuzim and the emot and imeim, as it shows up, these are what the local peoples call them in their own languages, right? So it doesn't always map nicely to Hebrew. In Hebrew, emah would be like a terror, like some terror. Ah, it's scary. Which could be, right? You got a giant guy tearing people apart. You could refer to that group as the terrors. That makes some sense. Okay, any other questions or comments? Am I speaking too quickly? Is the speed okay? Is anybody out there? Okay, great. Baruch Hashem. All right, so the Rl'ephayim. So here's my note on it. Okay, I'll skip the shades and dead spirits part. This because the spirits of the dead giants are the source of demons, variously referred to as shades in pagan literature of the region. It also is noteworthy that the verb rapha means heal. Perhaps locals gained healing insight from the demonic powers cursed to roam the earth with no rest. Okay, and where did this happen at? The asht'erot qarnayim, which is a weird word for 11 horns, 11 sets of horns. Qarnayim means two horns, right? So 11 sets of horns, probably craggy hillside or something like this. 11 horn pairs. In rabbinic writings, this spot is between large mountains, hence the horns imagery. The locations listed are all near Sodom and Amorah, and perhaps had contributed to the wickedness of that place. Okay, So I'm referencing Qimchi there. Now what about zuzim? Rashi says this is another name for the Rl'ephayim. So like I was saying, there are different clans of giants, right? So the different locals, they called them in their languages. I think zuzim is Amorite or something. I don't remember which language that's in. I think it's Amorite. Okay. Beham, at Ham, the et ha'imim, and also the imagery. So let's look at imagery. So emot literally means terrors, appropriate for a giant clan, as First Enoch describes the actions of some giants as being man-eaters. The men tried to appease them by feeding them, and when there was no more food, these giants ate the men themselves, right? So you could see how you could get a name like the Terrors. Beshave Kiryotayim. Kind of strange, like at vapor of the two horns, or emptiness of the two horns. And actually in Midrashic, in wisdom literature, this word shave is used poetically to mean idolatry, right? It's a vapor. It's something that doesn't last the test of time. So you could translate this, the empty twin towns, right? At the empty, the shave kiryotayim. A kirya is actually like a shtetl. You guys know this Yiddish word? Anybody heard of shtetl before? So that's a kirya. Here, I'll write it for you. Shtetl is in Yiddish. Kirya in Hebrew. Okay. Kirya. Like a town, little town, right? Not big enough to be considered an ir, a city. Ted says the first things that Yeshua did during his earthly ministry was to cast out demons and heal diseases. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. And you know this, there's a lot connecting the Messiah's actions, that his primary mission, it was twofold. One, to correct the fall of mankind, and two, to correct the wickedness that had been brought on by the fallen Bnei Elohim, sons of God, which is quite interesting when you understand that he has the title Ben Elohim, the Son of God, right? He gets a definite article there, the, right? He's the monogenos, right? He's the unique one, right? The one that was not created. And then the others, they also have the titles Bnei Elohim, sons of God, right? And so it's quite interesting that thus the special Son of God comes on a mission to correct the wickedness done by the other sons of God, some of them, those who had fallen. Some would call them archangels. We don't really know exactly what they are. We just know that they have a higher level of authority over normal angels. Because an angel, angelos in Greek, a malach in Hebrew, this is just messenger is really all it means. It can be a human as well, right? A human can be a malach, right? Malach HaMelech is the king's messenger, right? He sends an envoy or something. So context really helps us to come up with this idea, a notion of angels, right? Okay. In casting out demons, certainly this is helping to heal the earth. This was part of Yeshua's tikkun, part of his tikkun olam, restoration of the world, is undoing the damage that was done by these by these roaming descendants of wickedness. Someone writes me in private, Rabbi, just to ask, why did God allow the enemy to go to heaven and talk to him in the book of Job? Thank you. Okay, so brother is referencing in the first chapter of Eov, the book of Job. We're told that the divine council is meeting. Basically, it says the Bnei Elohim, the sons of God, were there, and also there was Hasatan, the Satan was there, right? So this is a good question. It's a confusing point. So in Jewish understanding, Hasatan is not the enemy of God. Ha-Satan, the Satan, is the name of an office, right? In Hebrew, we don't affix ha to the name. I think in Arabic they say like al such and such. This can happen, right? Like for a family name or something. But in Hebrew we don't do that, right? We don't say ha Moshe, the Moses, right? We don't say ha Yirmiyahu, the Jeremiah, right? We don't say ha any of this stuff. Ha Yeshua, the Yeshua. but the office, HaMashiach, we say, right? The Messiah. So for the case of Satan, in Hebrew, if you do a search in all of the places where Satan shows up in the Tanakh, except two, and two we have verbal issues happening, all of those places where it shows up, it's Ha-Satan. Ha-Satan. Let me just write it here to make sure everybody's following. I think a lot of you know this, but I just want to clarify. Usually when a question's asked, that means many don't get it. Okay, so Ha. Ha is the, right? That's the. Satan. Satan. The Satan. Okay? The Satan is how we reference that individual in Hebrew scripture. Ha-Satan. So it's not a name. It's not a name. Not yet. It's not a name yet. He's the Satan. The Satan. So this is actually a being that loves God. Loves him. Loves to be in his presence. His job is to serve the God of the universe by testing people. And that's why we have this dialogue back and forth. So it's a good question you asked, Achi, about why God tolerates him. He tolerates him because he's a good servant. Thus Satan is a good servant to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to the Blessed One, the Holy One, blessed be his name. The confusion comes because the nakhah, right, the serpent, is the one who is cursed, or diabolos. In the Greek, we reference to him, diabolos, the devil. Right? The devil is one who is a distinct enemy of God. In the Hebrew, referenced as halal ben-shakhar, right? It's kind of hard to translate, like the shiny one of the dawn, right, or bright one of the dawn. Variously interpreted as Venus, right? People used to think that was the devil, right? The one who rebelled against God. The confusion comes in that for us, for humans, Ha-Satan is never good, right? In Hebrew, Ra can be anything that's bad for you. It doesn't mean necessarily evil, right? So the Satan is bad for people because who wants to be tested, right? When you're tested, you might fail. So we never want the Satan around us. In Yeshua's time, through the Aramaic tradition, the Satan had already started to be called, the devil was already starting to be referred to as Satana. Satana. So in Aramaic, we write the V in Jewish Aramaic at the end. Ah. So that's the at the end. Oh, sorry. So the Satan in Aramaic is Satana. Hold on, I'm trying to get back to our previous page. All right. Satana. So that still means this is still the Satan. Right? But this has started to mean the nakhah, right? There's a separation between the office which God, the officer who's doing God's work, and this rebellious nakhah. See, when the Satan, the Hebrew the Satan, Ha-Satan, when he tests us, he's just doing God's will, right? That's why Rav Shaul says that he will never, that's Santa, right. Yeah, I made that joke in years past. I like that one. If you just move the N from Satan to the middle, you get Santa. Yeah. I first saw this joke on Saturday Night Live, and they had Dana Carvey. He used to play this character called Church Lady. And she was like hyper judgmental person, right? She'd always be like, well, isn't that special? And so one year she proves that Santa is Satan. Like, well, what happens if we just move this N over here? She moves the N. What does that spell? Satan! And it like echoes, Satan, Satan, Satan. So, yeah, who knows? But anyway, coming back to the question, it's the deep question that brother asks. So, that's why we're told that God doesn't allow him to tempt us more than we can bear, right? Now, the nakhah doesn't care about you at all, right? The nakhah doesn't care. The nakhah is just out for himself, and we are like fleas in his mind, the serpent, right? The snake, Leviathan, he's got various terms that apply to him. These various malevolent spirits are a different deal. They want to kill us. They want to destroy us. They want to harm us. They want to possess people when they can. The demons want to do all of this stuff. It's a different ball game. You're not talking about a servant of God anymore. You're talking about a rebellious, anti-God type of being. And so when this one starts testing Yeshua, he rightly gives him the title, Satana, right? Which really means the adversary. From Yeshua's perspective, he is the adversary, right? He's tempting and testing him. And there's some dispute whether this is the office of the Satan that's actually doing this, right? Is he supposed to? But the way that Yeshua speaks to him with vitriol, it makes me think that this is actually the devil. And so he now gets the title Satana in Greek, right? It comes to us as Satana in Greek, as Satan. It's now a proper name. It's evolved into a proper name. The Satan is the one who's doing God's will, testing us. Satan, as we say in English, this is a synonym with nakhah. So that's the confusion. As we go from Hebrew into Aramaic into Greek, and then the term evolves, people sometimes confuse the Satan of the Tanakh with Satan as a proper name today. This is the name that it seems like Yeshua is giving the nakhah, the devil, right? Adversary. Yeah, it's not the same one. Not the same one, Tet. It's not the Satan. This is a rebellious one. Yeah, the one who's tempting Adam and Eve, he really just wants humans to be destroyed. He's jealous that we will rule over the angels one day. Even though we're such little looking insignificant meat bags, someday we will rule the angels, right? Some of us. And so this, probably a throne guardian, this one is. The nakhah in the garden, right? A luminescent being, right? Nakhah relates to nechoshet, right? Which is bronze, right? Nechoshet, bronze or copper. And so nakhah, one of the meanings is to be lustrous, right? To be shiny. So this is, Eve wants to be like him. He is one of the Elohim, one of the divine beings created by God, because they could fly, and he looked very beautiful, right? He was very luminous. So it's kind of a triple play on words. Nakhah there. He's a serpent, possibly, and the Bible does make reference to that meaning. But he's probably also luminescent, right? Like a shiny being, right? He's a kind of angelic being, a throne guardian. And then he also nicheshes. He does soothsaying and sorcery. So the same verbal root has those three meanings: to speak deceptively, to do soothsaying, right? Or to luminate, right? To shine light, to be shiny, right? Again, that's where copper and bronze come from. Or to be a serpent, right? To be serpent-like. And in the ancient Near East, there are a lot of serpent-type beings with wings. The seraphim, the seraph we even have in Egyptian. A seraph was a winged, fiery serpent type of being, kind of like an angel type thing. So it's interesting. I don't know how many people have observed those things, but yeah. Yeah, great. So nice question to the one in private. He says, wow, thank you so much, Rabbi, really learning. Baruch Hashem. Yeah. So are we solid? Is everybody following? We've got that kind of put to rest. Satan today was the nakhah most likely back then, right? But he is not the Satan. That's an office name, right? The office name, like Hamelech, the king, right? It's not a name. But if you name someone the king, then that would be their name, right? Does it make sense, guys? Yeah. Okay. Genesis chapter 14, verse 6. For sure, the nakhah is not going into heaven, into the heavens. You know? You might like to, but it's not going to happen. Ve'et hachori behararam se'el ad el paran asher al hamidbar. And this is interesting. There's no verb here. Well, there might be, depending on how we interpret this one. But it's like continuing the previous verse. And also the hori. And if Yehoshua is with us today, I'd like to ask, the Quran in Arabic talks about the hori, right? The hori. These are these like created sex women that will be given to Muslim men when they enter heaven, right? They're the hori. I think they get 2 hori, and then they get a whole bunch of other virgins or whatever, right? And so I'm curious, in Arabic, is it the same? Is it a chait there? Or is it the equivalent of chaf? If you're here, Yehoshua, I'd like to know that. because when I read this, I thought, oh, how interesting. What if this, we were dealing with giant clans and the other one, and now we have the Hori, what if this some other weird type of people? I mean, I'm going to show you a scholarly explanation of who they are, but I'm just wondering if there was a spiritual, if this is maybe where this strange kind of demonic sexual creature comes from, the Hori. There's another word in Hebrew that's spelled the same that talks about frost. Yeah, it sounds like horror, Tet says. Yeah, true. That's the first thing I thought when I learned about it. We also have the same root can mean frost in Hebrew too, so it's kind of interesting. But okay, so anyway, so also the Hori. So we'll look at the modern explanation. Maybe Yehoshua is snoozing right now. Let's see, is he here? Yehoshua. Oh, okay, not here. Okay. All right, so Sarna comments, the Horites, the name is usually identified, right? That's why I'm curious if there's some kind of spiritual connection to Muhammad's, the Hori. So usually identified with the Hurrians, a non-Semitic people who emerged into the light of history toward the end of the 3rd millennium BCE, i.e. AD, in Upper Mesopotamia. They gradually spread throughout the Near East and had a powerful cultural impact on the area, especially on the Hittites. Their presence can be documented among the Hyksos, invaders of Egypt, in the 17th century BCE, and a century later there were important Hurrian enclaves. In Syria, Canaan. A common designation of Canaan in Egyptian texts of the New Kingdom is the land of Huru. So that's our Jewish scholar Sarna commenting on that. Harna, I made him a Hurrian. But I'm still interested. If you know anyone who knows Arabic or whatever, it'd be interesting to know I guess I could look it up myself. I just was hoping to get the easy answer. Beharam. So let's look at this. So it looks like in their mountain ranges. A harar is a mountain range. Or it can also mean like a magnificent giant mountain, right? But it's interesting. You can also interpret this as a verb. That's why I said before, there might be a verb in the sentence, depending on how we interpret this. So Ibn Ezra, to the help. Ibn Ezra, in their hill country, this is actually a PL verb, he says. For the form, compare as they spoke to him of chapter 50, verse 17 in Genesis. The correction of translation is when they went up to the mountain of Seir. So see, I was saying this could be a verb here. Be horam, right? So if we change the vowels a little bit about this. Their hill country is just wrong, according to Ibn Ezra. So he was so forceful about it, I thought, well, let's see if this could be different. So yeah, if we change the vowels, it could mean when they went up to the Mount Seir. Okay. Chizkuni comments on Beharam, the ending is similar to Exodus chapter 6, verse 7. Benavrom. So the meaning of our phrase is when they were ascending Mount Seir. So he's agreeing with Ibn Ezra. So there might really be something there. Until El Paran, right? This is a place. El Paran. It's like the what do you call that? The mountain goat of Paran, something like that. Asher, which is Al Hamidbar, by the wilderness or by the desert. Chizkuni comments that which is by the wilderness, this was the wilderness of the peoples, according to Ezekiel 20, verse 35, through which the Israelites would wander for 40 years. So it's interesting. We have kind of a little link to that place where that wandering will happen eventually. And all the evil that's happening here, right? Who knows about these Hori and the Rl'ephayim and the zuzim and the Amorim? Hey, this is the end of part 2 in this ancient triennial Torah portion. If you'd like to grow your tikkun in a Tikkun Olam project, let us know. We can work with you on that and get the funds to those who are in need. Or you can partner with us in some of our existing projects. L'olano, l'olano, vayehi kol hakavod Adonai. If you'd like to become a monthly supporter of this teaching ministry, please sign up at patreon.com/HebrewLiteracy.